Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everybody. Let me start here. First of all, there's an element in all of this Venezuelan talk that's, I think, being left out. And there are some, of course, who have covered this, although I would say briefly. Anytime you're talking about a copious amount of money and money being withheld and power being leveraged and people being leveraged for power and any other way you want to slice it, you have to understand that there is always Zionist influence with all of that. So basically, given that fact, there's no way that all of these deep state roots that are being pulled out of the ground don't have Zionist influence or direct ties to Israel associated with them. They have to. There are too many dots here. There are too many connections. And like I've said in the past, anytime you pull any of this out of the ground, yes, you're going to get Mexican and drug influence. You're going to get banking influence, which of course are the Jewish banking cartels and the whole thing. But the American government and the American military has to know that, and they have to have all of that information. And again, they don't have to publicize it, and they don't have to scream it from the mountaintops. They just have to have the information. So then again, if we know that, and again, I'm 98, 99% certain, of course, that that's the case, then why on earth would you hear someone like a Benjamin Netanyahu or somebody else screaming at the top of their lungs that Donald Trump is the worst? He wouldn't say that. He would basically be doing exactly what he's doing now, as far as Netanyahu is concerned. Netanyahu's giving one interview after the other, basically saying that Donald Trump is the greatest thing since sliced bread, America's our number one ally, this, that, and the other. That's basically all he can say. Because he's not going to say, you know what, we love the Maduro move, or we hate, rather, the Maduro move, and we hate it because we're affiliated with it. And we had control there also, along with other intelligence agencies, and now we've been caught, and we can't have any of that take place, and this is all terrible and XYZ. The only way that you can move against the deep state with the ease with which the American military has been doing it, and again, it's been clearly shown that these operations that are now being shown to the American people and the world probably took place back in 2020. But with that aside, which again is a difficult pill for some people to swallow, not understanding how military operations actually take place, and considering all of the levers that have to get pulled in order for that to transpire, but even so, if you were in a position like Netanyahu where basically you've been caught, and let's face it, he's been caught guilty with his hands covered in blood regarding a million things. He's arguably one of the world's largest criminals, without a doubt. And I would even go so far as to say, and again, I know for certain he's evil, as I'm sure many of you do as well, but what if there are even more evil people behind him, controlling him? Because if you have all of these deep state, again, deeply implanted roots that exist in a number of different countries, and then you see the figurehead, the individual who is allegedly leading said country, one can assume that the people, again, behind that person who's out in front, all of the people behind them are far more wealthy and far more sinister and far more evil than the person who is, again, thrust on Fox News or, most recently, again, Netanyahu talking with Dr. Phil of all people. I mean, that's embarrassing. So again, I mean, you know that I'm certainly not supporting Israel by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm certainly not supporting Netanyahu. I would just encourage people to consider that given the fact that we see certain individuals out in front, so-called representing certain countries, doesn't necessarily mean that that's really the person in charge. Just like Maduro. He wasn't really in charge. He just had a great deal of foreign intelligence agencies, cartels, XYZ, all working together to use him as the figurehead, while they again controlled what they controlled and sought to destroy that country and the people within and everything else. There was more going on there than what met the eye. And certainly I think that's the case with a great deal of people. So, again, certainly not running cover for Netanyahu. I think he's about as dirty gets. And yeah, he needs to be removed into irrelevancy, I think, rather quickly, because the more that people see him, of course, the worse people feel, certainly about the United States and any affiliation Donald Trump may or may have with them. But they also don't consider that Donald Trump is the one, and certainly our military is the one who holds all of the cards regarding Israel and Netanyahu. And like I've said in the past, it would be impossible that they wouldn't know the truth about what really went on, certainly during 9/11 and their ties with the JFK files and everything else. I mean, the list is endless. I don't have to revisit it, but I would just encourage people, again, to consider sort of the Zionist element in everything that you're seeing, certainly up to this point, and certainly when it comes to the deep state roots being pulled out of the ground. Zionism is a part of all of it. So I certainly hope they're not on the other end from a positive angle, so to speak, or so they would like to think, where they're going to have influence in these areas in a larger sense. Again, whether that be money making, political control, whatever it is. I certainly hope that that's not the case. I just hope that we slowly push them into irrelevancy because we have the goods on these people. So we give them a choice. You either back off, which I don't think they will ever do because they don't have it in their DNA to back off. They want everybody dead who isn't them. Or they're just eliminated. One of the two, but I don't know. Time will tell. I think that the Israel is saving Israel for last option, and certainly the post that was brought up in the Q boards. I think that is stretching itself out further on a timeline than what people might imagine. Again, the beating that they've taken over the last number of years here would certainly indicate that we are in that so-called phase. But it's not like that phase is going to go away anytime soon. Once you wake up again to the Zionist influence of things, you don't fall asleep to it. You never go back to sleep. You know that it's always there and it's always present. Case in point, of course, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Everybody's focusing on that particular area, and yet that's really, again, just a small piece of the pie. There's no way, again, that these individuals traveling from all over the United States who apparently don't have jobs and don't have money are making their way from one place to another, engaging in interstate travel just to basically show up where ICE agents are apparently arresting illegal aliens. Case in point with the Renee Good gal, who of course got shot for trying to run over an ICE agent. Again, I'm not going to spend any time on it because it's common sense. You don't do that. So I'm just going to leave it there. However, I will speak on two particular elements of this which need to be brought up. The first, I think, has to do with the deterioration of the mental capacity of the left, specifically among females. Yes, it's a problem among those on the left who are male, but the female mind, when left to their own devices, certainly specifically on the left in this particular case, is one deranged state of affairs. If you're so far gone, and I understand the background of her life, allegedly has children, husband died a couple of years ago, seemingly from the COVID shots, why wouldn't he? That's happening all of the time. But even so, the deterioration of the mind and their inability to grasp reality and even the rule of law just means that they can be led around by the back of the neck by anybody who is of like mind, which is equally as deranged, or just by the devil himself. So much to the point where you actually get it in your head that it's 100% fine to obstruct an actual investigation and or arrest of individuals who are breaking the law. That would never cross my mind. Not in a million years would it ever cross the mind of either me or any other logical thinking human being to say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get in my car and drive from point A to point B to go obstruct justice. Unless, of course, you're being paid. But even so, There's no amount of money that would be able to convince an individual to put yourself between an illegal breaking the law and law enforcement trying to get to said illegal, thereby obstructing justice, let alone, again, getting in an automobile, pressing on the accelerator of said automobile and moving yourself in the direction of an armed ICE agent or federal law enforcer. I mean, again, it defies logic because it's illogical. But this, unfortunately, is the fragility of the female liberal mind. This is what they do. They have nothing else. There's no home life. There's no stable husband. There's no stable home. It's just, let's watch TV and believe what we are shown, which, of course, is brainwashing, which is why it's a brainwashing device, the television. And then they believe it, and then that becomes their family. In fact, you'll hear the exact same argument when it comes to blacks and gangs. That the reason that blacks tend to gravitate toward gangs is because of a deterioration of a healthy home. Or, again, the complete absence of a healthy home. So what do? They look for companionship. They look for anything that even resembles a family in their warped and deranged outlook on things. And then they end up gravitating toward individuals of, again, like mind, like skin color, like behavior, like action. And then they believe that what they are doing is the way that things should get done. It isn't any different with a liberal female, specifically a liberal female. It's the same kind of thing. This is why, again, they all tend to look the same. This is why they sound the same. They're overweight. They're disgusting. They don't take care of themselves. They don't look well. You can see it in their eyes. Again, it's pattern recognition. This is not, me sitting around making fun of fat liberal women. It's just pattern recognition. They behave the same because they gravitate toward one another like moths to the flame. And they just, again, behave in very similar ways. This individual apparently turned out to be a lesbian. I mean, again, married to a man, couple of kids, something like that, and now all of a sudden is gay? No, that's a person desperate for companionship. That's a person who's desperate for attention. That's a person who's fine being taken advantage of, with or without their knowledge or participation. They're just an empty vessel. And when you lead your life like that, your life will be shortened dramatically. You will get killed. It's cumulative risk. Spoken about it before endless times on the show. That's just another example of cumulative risk. So with that aside, again, I'm not crying over spilled milk regarding her illegality and her stupid actions. Stupid is as stupid does. And that's the way that clearly goes. Again, it's clearly trauma related. She had a lot of problems. That's beyond evident. But again, if you can't grasp logic because you're so far brainwashed by, again, complete strangers, whether they be politicians, people on TV, or whomever, then yeah, they're going to lead you down a hole that's going to get real dark real quick. Doesn't matter really who you are. It's like that with just about anybody. You don't have to be a liberal female to be that way. You can be, frankly, just about anybody. But on top of that, excuse me, I find this part to really be fascinating. And I can't believe, although I can, that it's being lost on endless people who apparently have a brain in their skull and eyeballs in their head. Have you seen the photographs from the aftermath regarding Renee Good's illegality, which led to her being shot and killed? The inside of the SUV that she was driving is covered in blood. There's blood everywhere. It's all over the airbag when she ran into the back of another automobile. It's on the door. It's on the back of her seat. It's on the console. There's blood all over the place. And then there's footage, of course, of an ambulance and EMS workers attending to her. and then caution tape around the scene, and then law enforcement officers with handheld picture cameras taking photographs of the evidence of the scene. All of these things never happened with the Charlie Kirk fake shooting, did they? No blood, no caution tape, no law enforcement taking photographs of the scene, no law enforcement keeping people away from the scene. None of that happened. No ambulance, nobody attending to him. They just picked him up like a side of beef, threw him in the back of an SUV, and off they went. Do you not see the contrast between these two scenarios? It's glaring. It's so bright. It should prove to everybody in the blink of an eye that Charlie Kirk is alive and that whole thing was staged. Because the way that it was done with Kirk-Good, that's the way that it's really supposed to go down. You set up a perimeter, you keep people away. Law enforcement, they call more law enforcement. You set up a larger perimeter if you have to. The caution tape gets rolled out. I'm not even a cop and I know this shit. And then you take photographs of all of the evidence, the automobile, the inside, the outside, the bullet hole. They have a picture of the bullet hole through the windshield. It's all of this evidence that was completely and 100% absent in the Charlie Kirk thing. People have got to wake up to the psychological operations taking place right in front of their faces. Because again, in the blink of an eye, you can have a completely contrasting example, totally the opposite of what you've seen in the past regarding somebody else. And if a person doesn't look at those two scenarios and go, wait a minute, there's no consistency between either one of these scenarios, then that means that one of them is staged and one of them is fake. And again, I understand that we live in a time of psychological operations, and during that particular shooting of Kirk-Good, people would say, well, that was staged also. I understand that people would jump to that conclusion. It makes complete and utter sense. Why wouldn't they? They're looking to have something pop off in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but I mean, let's face it, you have crazy people in Minneapolis, Minnesota anyway. You have crazy people traveling from out of town all of the time, to engage in any kind of a protest, although I find it interesting that the flavor is basically gone now. That the vast majority of the people from 2020 don't want to do it anymore. I understand it's cold outside and it's a little too chilly for your average protest. But even with politicians calling for people to take to the streets, like, what's his name, Jacob Fry, or, the mayor of Minneapolis, that little twerp, and then, of course, Tim Walz and anybody else. Anybody calling for any of that, it's falling on deaf ears by and large. The vast majority of people are not participating. They're just looking at one another and saying, you know what, I think I'll just sit this one out. I'll just stay home and watch The View, and that'll be the end of it, and, whatever else. It's a little too cold outside, and really, I really just don't care. I can yell shame at the top of my lungs all I want with a cell phone in my hand, but what am I really going to accomplish? The other aspect of this, too, which is funny and equally as ignorant, is that, of course, you have late-night hosts all basically saying, and again, they were given this line to say, which is why they're all saying it, but they were given a line, clearly by government, that they need to blame Donald Trump and Epstein files as to why this entire ICE shooting took place, or the Venezuela raid more specifically took place, because that's being done to distract from Epstein files, apparently. Again, that kind of an explanation would only work for the lowest common denominator. Excuse me again. No one's talking about the Epstein files. Nobody's bringing any of that up. Lots of weird pictures in those files. It's pretty obvious what was going on. I don't think we really need to dig into it much anymore. But again, much like what I said earlier, if people don't think that there's a Zionist connection to all of that, then they've lost the plot. They've completely missed the entire point, which means, again, the U.S. military and our intelligence agencies, certainly the good individuals, they have the goods on all these people. And Donald Trump's not involved in it. There's still no evidence that that's the case. But even so, if they're all told that's why the Venezuelan thing took place, again, joke's on them. I think it happened back in 2020. That's when we moved our military down there anyway, so why wouldn't have we done what we needed to do down there regarding Maduro and securing his safety back in 2020? But again, I just think that this is being lost on a great deal of people, because if you're listening to late night talk show hosts and you're getting their opinion, which isn't even their opinion, it's a script that they're handed to actually read and then again psychologically subvert anybody who's actually listening or watching them. If you're that gullible to actually believe their explanation, again, a complete stranger on your television, and just blindly believe their explanation at face value, if you're that gullible, then yeah, you'll end up just like Kirk-Good. You'll be that easily brainwashed into engaging in an action or even having a conversation about something for which you know nothing about, but taking a hard stance and that you're 100% certain that it's this way. It's that kind of, again, fragility of the human mind that is really being toyed with here. And that really is the psychological operation that's consistently taking place. You have people, again, like Tim Walz, Jacob Fry, and these other idiots. Certainly, and it's not just in Minnesota, it's everywhere. I mean, if you watch a school board meeting, in any American school board, you'll hear the exact same kind of gaslighting. It's all done for the purpose of mental manipulation. And again, you're being taken advantage of. The sick part is that these individuals are being taken advantage of by people who have been taken advantage of and are controlled. There's nothing clean about Tim Walz. There's nothing clean about Jacob Fry. Remember, that Catholic school shooting that happened in Minneapolis was 100% fake. Jacob Fry runs right up to, the microphone with the cameras on him, and he does his best acting job, and he's a terrible, terrible actor. That means that this guy is controlled, again, by some of the worst people you can possibly imagine. But it's showing, again, on purpose. There's a spotlight on Minneapolis and Minnesota as a whole because it is a deep state apparatus, no different than, say, for example, Columbus, Ohio, or any other place in America for that matter. The deep state in the United States has had its head cut off, but its body is still withering around. And this, of course, what you saw with Kirk-Good is an example of the collateral damage that comes as a result of the body still withering. People will still follow the dead body, even because it looks like it's alive when in fact it's not. Let me give you some other examples as to how the head has been cut off here, I think, certainly regarding the deep state in the United States, and continues to be cut off around the world. Again, when Donald Trump, for example, brings up Cuba, and he brings up buying Greenland, and he brings up, again, these other places, he's not lying. Because chances are a deal's already been made, because the individuals who are the hosts of those particular countries know that they've already lost. So if there's a hemisphere battle taking place among these countries, so be it. But that doesn't mean that you're immediately going to remove all of the bad fractions within those countries. I think Mexico certainly has to be next, Canada, etc., etc. There's just so much illegality. But again, we also know that Justin Trudeau, for example, in Canada, was arguably one of the worst as well. There was nothing competent about him. He was completely controlled. He was controlled to take that country as far left as humanly possible and turn it into his dad's country of Cuba, basically. Of course, being Justin Castro. Same kind of thing. But when Trump is cutting the heads off of these snakes, and he's clearly doing it, the body is still going to wither a little bit, and there's still going to be some collateral damage. But in the good sense of things, you have this, of course. Trump to withdraw U.S. from dozens of UN international organizations. There's something like 66 United Nations and international organizations that we're withdrawing from. including major forums for cooperation on climate change, peace, and democracy. This is a good thing. This is a good thing that we are no longer, again, giving our time, money, and or effort to any of these organizations because they're all designed to engage in illegality. Whether that's move drugs, money, children, human beings, you name it. It says, this is from, again, Al Jazeera, but it's been printed everywhere. It says the list shared by the White House included 35 non-UN organizations, including notably the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance and the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Although the IPCC was included in the list of non-UN bodies by the White House, it is a UN organization that brings together top scientists to assess the evidence related to climate change, which is fake, and provide periodic scientific assessments to help inform political leaders. Again, there's more here. It says, in addition, the White House said that it's withdrawing from 31 UN entities, including UN's top climate change treaty body, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UN Democracy Fund, and the top UN entity working on maternal and child health, the UNFPA. Again, at face value, a person would say, why on earth would you want to withdraw from something having to do with maternal and child health? Simple. It has nothing to do with maternal and child health. It's quite the opposite. Again, the name is the trick. That organization probably has to do with child trafficking and abortion, or selling body parts. That's probably what it's for. It's like, again, these Somali centers called, Child Learning Center, and learning is misspelled. It's just a name on a sign that's even misspelled. That's how dumb the Somalis are. They don't understand that at face value, let alone text alone, that looks suspicious. It isn't any different with any of these UN or non-government affiliated organizations. Not to mention, of course, it's your tax dollars. It's everybody's tax dollars. We're always going to this. And now we're saying we're not doing that anymore, which means the organization dissolves, or they again try to rewrite themselves as something else, but I don't think it's going to work. You also have this move, which I think should prove to people that words can be more powerful rather than money. And that when you have this much sway and you say particular things in a particular way, you send a chill down the backs of the individuals, certainly the money lenders and the land grabbers, and we know who they are. But either way, you can scare even them by, again, wielding the power that exists with the executive branch. This was also from Zero Hedge specifically, and it was titled Blackstone Craters After Trump Teases Institutional Ban on Single-Family Homes. BlackRock, of course, has been buying up all these homes. Blackstone is one of the companies affiliated with them, if not the exact same company. And now he's basically saying, yeah, we can't have that anymore. We can't have this one entity monopolizing all private single-family homes. It's completely ridiculous, and we just can't have that. It says the following here. Shares in Blackstone cratered on Wednesday after President Donald Trump announced that he would be immediately taking steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single-family homes, and we will be calling on Congress to codify it. Quote, for a very long time, buying and owning a home was considered the pinnacle of the American dream. It was the reward for working hard and doing the right thing. Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, but now, because of the record high inflation caused by Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress, that American dream is increasingly out of reach for far too many people, especially younger Americans. Again, Trump said that he would discuss the topic along with other cost of living initiatives during a speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos later this month. And yeah, Blackstone stock here plummeted to 9.3% when those statements were made. So, words with weight behind them mean more than money. And again, influence is money. And that scares people. which is a good thing, certainly in this case. Now, before I move on to education, there's one particular thing here, geopolitically rather, that I just want to make mention of again and reiterate. With all of the good things happening, and it's undeniable that endless good things are happening, and it's moving at a very fast pace, which should show people that this has been well planned, well organized, because you can't move this quickly and influence particular groups of people, let alone corporations or what have you, stocks, you name it, without there being a very strategic plan in place that's certainly, again, been well organized. There are always going to be serious concerns. The wireless body area network is clearly one of those. Massive surveillance is one of those. I'll give you a very brief example. And this is how, again, very small town and insidious this kind of thing can become, certainly in any area in the United States or anywhere else for that matter, regardless of where you live. In the town where I live, apparently, I'm assuming it's a grant, although it may not be, there's $250,000 that apparently is going to be spent and be given to some outside group that's going to come into town and examine intersections and roadways within, again, a very small square block of the town where I live. And they're going to spend, again, $250,000 to figure out why accidents happen in those particular areas, so they say. Again, at face value, it's a colossal waste of money. They're saying things like, well, we need to figure out why people are getting in car accidents. Are they just distracted drivers? Is there something better we can do? Do we need more surveillance cameras? See, this is the kind of thing that gets done underneath people's noses without them even paying attention. And it's disgusting. And it's maddening, too. I mean, if you want a mood changer on a dime, I recommend watching a local city council meeting or a local school board meeting. You're going to see some of the dumbest humans on the face of the planet laughing about, again, basically spending money that they don't have, and then bragging about how, well, they're just going to have to go back to the taxpayers to see how to pay for it. Meanwhile, again, the surveillance walls close in a little bit more, and more people, again, seem to either not care or not think that there's a way out of it necessarily. So I can tell you basically all that I've done in my personal life is basically use artificial intelligence far less. As I've said before, and as I've even written in the past, I've used it as a legal tool because it's a good legal tool. It can be used, again, as good legal guidance to give you good legal information about a variety of subjects, almost regardless of the subject, that can, of course, help you in a particular direction depending on an investigation you're engaging in or something else that you're trying to do or whatever else. And then, of course, when I put that children's book together, I did that as a joke. I mean, I really did. It was a joke. It was me giving a middle finger to artificial intelligence. It was me giving a finger to the establishment by saying, and even Amazon for that matter, by saying, well, if artificial intelligence is going to exist, then I'm just going to use it as a weapon against itself. I'm going to take that gun that's been pointed at all of us, as if to say, again, ultimately, this is going to rewrite your brain and the way that you think and the way that you make decisions. I'm going to take that gun out of its hand, turn it back around, put it back in its own hand, but have the barrel facing artificial intelligence and Amazon and groups like that. And then I'm going to pull the trigger. And then they'll end up publishing something that they didn't want to publish in the first place. Because even in that, weird little children's book, there's a whole lot of truth that they don't want people to know. I wouldn't have been able to get away with that in 2020, let alone 2021 or 2022. But I got away with it this time. So I'm using artificial intelligence less, far less than what I was using it, again, back when I was using it as a legal tool. I may still use it as a legal tool from time to time, but, when it comes to like creating memes or having conversations with artificial intelligence about what to do and XYZ, I mean, that kind of stuff is ridiculous. You can even see those Chat GPT commercials on television, which I think are pathetic. You'll have a Hell, what's one of them? A guy's in his apartment building in a what looks like a terrible neighborhood, and he's cooking dinner for a gal, and he asks ChatGPT, of course, so says the commercial, what meal do I cook that makes it look like I'm interested in her without making it look like I'm being overbearing or something like that. And he's making noodles for her or something like that. And then it shows a recipe and that's the end of the Chat GPT commercial. If people are relying on artificial intelligence for that kind of a thing, then they are too far gone. Because eventually it's going to be, hey, how do I tie my shoes? Hey, what should I wear today? I mean, they're going to be asking a machine scenarios that take away individualized thought or creativity, which means it's really not coming from you. It's just coming from something else that is not real, hence the word artificial. So if I was to basically give somebody a goal, I would say use artificial intelligence less, if at all. I would say that there are certain, again, legal scenarios where you might want to use it and look things up, at which point, yeah, do that. Because knowledge is power, and you can arm yourself with that to some extent. But I'm basically saying, again, that sort of in summary, that just because there's a great deal of great things happening right now, of which there certainly are, it doesn't mean that there still isn't concern for a lot of the tools that are still existing and coming down the pipeline, and even tools that have existed for a very long time. Certainly the wireless body area network stuff and everything affiliated with that. The specified military targeting of individuals, certainly from a bioengineer, physiological standpoint. I mean, all of that is alarming, and that's putting it mildly. But anyway, keep an eye out for stuff like that too. And again, we can only vote with our feet, as far as I know. We can't bust into Skynet and burn the whole thing down quite yet, but we can certainly choose to not participate in certain things that bring about harm, whether we know that they bring about harm or not. Okay, with that little monologue or soliloquy to the side here, let me mention this now. This was brought to my attention the other day, and thank you for bringing this to my attention. I've spoken about this individual before, who happens to be a female Somali member of the Westerville City School District in Westerville, Ohio, which is Franklin County, which of course is where Columbus is located. This particular individual is named Anisa Liban. Now, before New Year's Day, I believe it was actually, either New Year's Eve or the day before that, I initiated a open records request for emails regarding her to and from her from November 1st through December. In typical fashion, their treasurer got back to me rather quickly because she was in the office. And not many records requests get made to Westerville. However, I'll mention that here in a minute also. But I made the request, and then they immediately got back to me, and they, in typical fashion, said that that's too broad of a request, which clearly it isn't. As I've said before, if I'm asking for the emails to and from a specified board member, then just provide them. It does not matter how many PDFs it takes in order to send them, just send them. So then I did what I typically do. I said, it's not a broad request. We'll do this 2 weeks at a time. Give me all of the emails to and from her from November 1st through November 14th. They got back to me again and said that's too broad, at which point I said, no, it isn't. And then they got back to me, and I made a couple other requests along with the initial request and the revised request. And then they said, we'll get back to it. And we'll see what we can do in XYZ. So, as all of that is still transpiring and I'm still waiting to hear back with that documentation, a Facebook post was sent my way that said the following, and I put together a Substack article now about this very thing. I titled it, Somali School Board Member Anisa Liban of Westerville, Ohio, raised an alarming $161,000 for her election. Anisa Liban, Westerville City Schools Board Member, raises $161,000 for her election, far more than anyone else perhaps in Westerville or Ohio history, raising serious questions of legality. Again, I've written about this woman before. I've spoken about her before. She was the one that was brought on to the Westerville City School Board the same day that they voted against LifeWise. I believe whatever that was back in 2020, in the spring of 2024. I'm sorry, fall of 2024, right before the election, where they wanted a levy, a property tax levy that ended up failing. But they got rid of one of their sitting board members and made her resign, and Nancy Nestor Baker. And then they, again, decide to bring in this woman as the interim. She has zero qualifications. She was an activist, quote unquote. She allegedly has a degree from Ohio State, and that's it. And she's a black Somali female. She's, in my opinion, people like this have serious deep state ties. And I think that's an understatement. Nobody goes into a predominantly white area as a interim school board member, runs for school board, and raises that kind of money, or is donated that kind of money. No one else running was donated that amount of money, not even by a long shot. And here's specifically what the Facebook post said, and this was from the Facebook page, Committee to Abolish Ohio Property Taxes. It says the following here, quote, a basic understanding of how the 2025 Westerville Schools election was funded starts with a simple view of the money flowing to each committee and candidate. We'll do a deep dive into each. In the meantime, the data can be accessed via the committee candidate filings in the folder below or via the Franklin County Board of Election and Ohio Secretary of State. Anisa Liban appears to have raised a historic amount of money, likely the most ever, by a WCSD board candidate and outraised her competitors by 6 to 11 times. The yes, quote-unquote, side of the levy issue outraised the no side by 24 times. You may recall that they ended up passing an income tax levy because their property tax failed in 2024. So they came back around in the 2025 election cycle and actually ended up passing an income tax levy, which is even dumber. Anisa Liban raised approximately $161,000. The Our Community, Our Schools Committee raised $91,200 and change $1,000. Nafiso Jamali, which I believe is also a Somali female who was running for the board and ended up losing. They ended up being donated to, allegedly, $25,300 and change. Christy Meyer, who is the current board president, raised $14,700 and change. A Tajani Brown, $13,900. Concerned Citizens of Westerville, this was the group that was run by Doug Krinsky, who I emailed, and he got back to me and whatever else. And again, solid guy. I've played his audio on the show before too. He raised $3,700. And then a Mark Stevens, who was allegedly running, although no one seemed to know who he was or why he was even there, he apparently terminated his campaign and didn't raise any money. Why is it that a Somali female, Anisa Liban, raised $161,000? More than all the rest practically combined. Now, what I did was, and this is an example of what anybody can do, is you can take that Facebook post that I've included, of course, in the Substack article. And you can toss it into an AI system, and it will give you some information back. Now, before I mention what it tossed back to me, I got on the Franklin County, Ohio Board of Elections website to look her name up and look for the PDF and Excel document. And wouldn't you know it, the website is under construction. Now, what are the odds of that? As of right now, as I'm recording this, on Thursday, January 8th, the website is under construction, where this information should be freely available, along with other information that should be specified. There should be a line item breakdown of exactly who donated to her and what amount. Now, here's where it gets illegal for her, big time. If a single red cent of any of that donated money came from an illegal organization, then she's in deep shit. If she doesn't give the money back that she didn't spend during her campaign, then she's in deep shit. If she gives the money back, but gives it back to the same or differing illegal organization to then maybe hold the money for her, money laundering, then she's really in deep shit. Here's the funny part about this. And it's really not, the grand scheme is not funny. But the funny part is this. These Somalis don't seem to understand how real crime actually works. Like, if you want to get away with something, how do you really do it? Again, these are the same people that misspell the word learning on a sign that's outside of a quote-unquote learning center for kids, and yet it's completely fraudulent. It's their brazen approach to what it is that they're trying to do that gives them away as doing it clearly either illegally, unethically, or both. The simple fact that she would accept, as a school board member, $161,000, which is an unheard of amount of money, not even when you compare it with everything else. But that alone is an unheard of amount of money for a school board member. You'd be lucky to get $5,000. And that's even, again, even that's a stretch. And most of that money, of course, gets spent on signs. It's all for signage. It's for, building a website is a couple $100, for a year, for a political campaign. And of course, you can take in donations that way too. But either way, that money has to be spent and you have to show how you spent it. But it can't be given back to a fraudulent organization, with or without wanting to launder it or not. It almost doesn't matter. Excuse me. You just can't do any of that. So the simple fact, again, comparison included or not, the amount of money that she brought in deserves an immediate investigation from the state AG's office. 100%. And wouldn't you know it, Somali fraud happens to be the flavor of the month, does it not? Again, their brazen approach to even the appearance of impropriety is amazing. They don't even look nor ask to see whether or not they think this looks off. They just assume what? That it won't look off to anybody with a brain in their skull or eyes in their head. They don't even think that it looks illegal to people with an IQ above 80, which it clearly looks illegal to anybody. So I'm going to give her a suggestion. You should resign immediately, but she won't, because these people dig in like ticks. And the other board members should be asking serious questions about her, because here's the fun part, and I love this part. This is the part I love. They're going to let a female Somali who is probably, allegedly, engaged in serious campaign finance fraud drive the Westerville City Schools ship right into the fucking ground. They're 100% fine with it. Nancy Nestor Baker was kicked off of the board because of an ethics violation where she voted in favor of her own daughter who was working in the district. A vote came down having to do with her daughter's contract, which again, family members shouldn't work in the same school district. That's my take. I'm old-fashioned, whatever, nepotism. But either way, that shouldn't exist. But they forced her off the board for that. This is worse. This is way worse. They also allegedly got rid of a previous superintendent who was only employed there for like less than a month because the guy showed an image of one of his books that he had written on a PowerPoint presentation for a nonprofit speech that he was giving to a group not affiliated with the Westerville City Schools. They got rid of him because of that, allegedly. But this is allowed to stand? And why is it that your Board of Elections website in that county is now all of a sudden under routine maintenance or scheduled construction? Or shit. I don't buy it for a second. No one raises that amount of money for a school board position. It's unheard of. Now, when I tossed that specific Facebook post into AI, here's what it said. It actually came back and said, these records show Anisa Liban's campaign, Friends of Anisa Liban, quote unquote, raised approximately $161,000 in 2025 with significant out-of-state contributions, such as from Washington State and Massachusetts. To which I said, this is suspicious enough. I wonder if other board members of those running received money from other states in the United States. Why is it that a Somali female running for a school board position in Westerville, Ohio and Franklin County, Ohio, is receiving out-of-state donations from across the United States? That's not illegal, as it turns out, but it is if those organizations or people are illegal. That's where it becomes an illegal action. And like I said, if she doesn't say exactly where she spent every red cent of that money and what she spent it on, if she says she spent all that money on campaign signs or travel or a website or whatever, no chance. No chance. She not only has to give all of that money back, but if she gives it back to the same entities that gave it to her in the first place, then she's laundering that money. Specifically, again, if those entities are illegal. And if it somehow finds its way back to her after the campaign, it's money laundering. It's right. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. Have you ever seen these videos of Indians who get caught shitting in the street in America? It's hilarious. They're absolutely hilarious. They'll get caught either by an American or whatever. It happens over in the UK. It happens everywhere. But one of these street shitters will get caught, and then they have this look on their face like they didn't do anything wrong. Oh, what do you mean? And the person goes, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you taking a shit on the sidewalk in the middle of the day?" And they go, What's the problem? I didn't, I don't, I didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing wrong here. They have no concept that the thing that they're doing at face value looks illegal. If this were, for example, a banking irregularity that, say, somebody in cybersecurity would be looking at, individuals that watch money, exchange hands from one person to another, this would be flagged immediately. It would be instantly flagged. as being something that is clearly suspicious. And then it would, of course, immediately move up within a company to then flag that account, flag the location of the individual, the amount of money that's being exchanged. And then again, certain accounts would be shut down. A full-blown investigation would take place. Clearly, information would be gathered and then handed over to law enforcement and legal authorities and prosecutors. That's what would happen in the banking system. That's exactly what has to happen here with the case of Anisa Liban. It's crystal flipping clear that this has to be the case. And this is just one person, who ironically enough happens to be somebody that I've been paying attention to ever since she showed up. Because she sticks out like a sore thumb. Westerville is about as white and old as you can get. They're called the Westerville Olds. It's a nickname that exists up there. They're just lifers. People who were born there, have lived there their whole lives. They stick their chests out like they own the place. Nobody's better than them. And then all of the sudden, their Somali population dramatically increases. And all of the sudden, a Somali female is hand-selected from a bucket full of candidates to be the interim board member on a school board. Of all the people, they picked her right in the middle of a Christian life-wise debate, right to religious instruction debate. And they didn't think that that would look suspicious to anybody. I immediately was like, wow, this is a red flag. Something else is going on here. And you may recall, as I've said it before, the CIA has its tentacles and the deep state has its tentacles in people like her, in organizations like American school boards and school districts. It's one of their playgrounds. It's one of the places where they steal from people. You're telling me that a property tax failed miserably a year ago, but this past year in 2025, an income tax passed on the election. Sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. What person does that? What person says no overwhelmingly to not wanting their property taxed yet again, to have it siphoned off by a failing school district, to then go, you know what? Take it directly out of my income, because that makes more sense. It doesn't happen. Voter fraud. I'm going to leave it there regarding Anisa Liban. But like I said at the end of the article, somebody better get their ass in gear up there and file full-blown investigations against her immediately. You have, I think, a 2-year statute of limitations, but you need to get going. It's too suspicious. And she's too brazen. Again, in a previous article, I played audio of her, which I link in the current Substack article, of her again screaming at the top of her lungs. It certainly appears to be her and sounds like her. When she was running for school board, saying that they're going to change the area and whatever else, and she cares about Somalis and this, that, and the other. Again, their criminal behavior blinds them, like I said, from even the appearance of impropriety. They don't even care, nor are even thinking about whether or not the thing they're doing is illegal. Like a street shitter, for example, like I said, or even somebody driving down the road with a giant banana on the roof of their car, speeding with no license plate. Even that person would get pulled over, specifically a foreigner or a Somali, and they would be like, "Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm breaking the law?" The cop would be like, "Well, sir, ma'am, you have a giant banana on the roof of your car, which is flapping around in the wind and looks like it's a hazard to everybody around you. You have no license plates. You're not wearing a seatbelt. And, there's smoke billowing out of the car. What the hell are you doing?" "Oh, I'm not doing anything wrong." Again, they don't even look at themselves. It's amazing, which makes them easy to catch. Now, as one might imagine, it becomes tricky because if individuals around them or individuals in positions of power who should actually hold these people accountable don't do that, then that becomes even more blinding. People are seeing that clearly when it comes to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and endless other places like the whole state of California and everywhere else for that matter. But when it's this open and closed, and there's this much smoke, you'd better believe there's a huge fire. So, yeah, all I've done is write the article, move it around. You can already find it on a basic search engine. If you search her name, the Substack article immediately will pop up. Because apparently not many people are writing articles about this woman, but she's highly suspicious. So, yeah, if you live in the area, get on it. Start filing the papers, contact the necessary people. I lay it all out in the Substack as to who should do what and who should be contacted and XYZ. Get on it. And then get rid of her ass. Because it's just too suspicious. Again, I'll link that article in the description below and you can check it out and definitely move it around if you don't mind. I'd greatly appreciate it. Again, no money comes my way as a result of the article being shared. That's not how it works on Substack. It's just getting it to the right people so that they do the right thing. Accountability, ladies and gentlemen, it's what we all long for. And if we let foreigners or individuals with foreign ties or anything even remotely close to that engage in this kind of suspicious behavior, we'll put it that way, if not illegality, then we don't have a nation. So we need to get it back. And throwing people in jail regardless of their sex and regardless of their race or ethnicity, it doesn't matter. The law is the law, and it's supposed to apply to everybody. Okay. Now, speaking of the decline, and permanent decline, and ever-existing decline, the rock bottom, the scum, the bottom of the septic tank that is American education. Let's see here. This is from The Guardian, and this is a rather telling article, I think, certainly when it comes to the business of literacy. This was from Margaret Sullivan, and it was titled, "Many Schools Don't Think Students Can Read Full Novels Anymore. That's a Tragedy." This is a short article, but it's worth it, and I'm going to read this one because it ties into everything literacy related that I've brought up in the dumbing down, the purposeful dumbing down of the human population. The subtitle said, "Increasingly teens are given only parts of books, and they often read not in print, but on school-issued laptops." This was from this past Tuesday, January 6th. Believe it or not, this started back when I was in college over 20 years ago, where they stopped assigning full-blown books to people who were college students, and they were assigning packets or portions of articles. And then the professor would put together this compilation of small snippet information that they wanted the student to read and then react to, rather than take in the entire text. Now, of course, back then, most of the material was crap anyway, but they were kind of doing us a favor because we didn't have to read all of the crap. But either way, this, this piecemeal sort of quick dosage material, they think actually works for American K-12 schools when it comes to literacy. Joke's on them. It's already been proven to not work. So here's what it says. Quote, "Reading fiction has been such a joy for me, and my heart broke a little to learn recently that many schools no longer assign full books to high school students. Rather, teens are given excerpts of books, and they often read them not in print but on school-issued laptops, according to a survey of 2,000 teachers, students, and parents by the New York Times. The reasons are many, including the belief that students have shorter attention spans, and schools' efforts to teach students to perform well on standardized tests. One factor is the Common Core, a set of standards adopted by many states in the United States more than a decade ago. Given those standards, many schools use curriculum products like StudySync, which uses an anthology approach to introducing students to literature. The upshot is that many teens read far fewer full novels than in the past, teachers acknowledge. Some teachers, however, chose to rebel. Quote, many teachers are secret revolutionaries and still assign whole books, said Heather McGuire, a survey respondent who teaches English in New Mexico. I cheer these renegades because I can't imagine my life or bringing up my own children without reading books in print. One of my most cherished memories as a parent is taking my 7-year-old daughter to pick up our family's copy of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire from a local bookstore the first day it came out. In the car, she had the hefty volume on her tiny lap and had begun racing through it. The author went on and said, when we got home, her oldest brother, not entirely charitable, seized it from her hands, and I realized it might have been wise to invest in 2 copies. Somehow we worked it out. But if kids must fight, let them fight over a book, I say. These days, my grown children still read for pleasure. I recently noticed one with Nora Ephron's classic Heartburn, and another reading Ian McEwan's latest What We Can Know. Of course, there's nothing stopping today's school kids from reading on their own, especially by taking advantage of school libraries or public libraries. Well, therein lies the problem. A little side note here, the libraries are the issue. I understand, a book is a book and, you want them reading something, but you have to understand the war on literature here. You want them reading something that is above grade level to, again, raise their level of thinking, but you also want them reading something that is nonfiction to the nth degree. Not some watered down version of something that that the author thinks is true, but the actual truth itself. And that in itself requires a great deal of investigation, which is why I recommend thriftbooks.com. It's a great website. Anyway, it goes on here. It says, but not every kid has been brought up with reading fiction as a part of everyday life. Well, they shouldn't be reading fiction in my humble opinion, but anyway. They might need that school assignment, perhaps of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, or John Green's The Fault in Our Stars, or William Golding's Lord of the Flies, to help them realize how rewarding reading a novel can be. Yes, start to finish. Put a copy of Claire Keegan's haunting novella Foster in a teenager's hands, and it's only 130 pages long, and concerns about atrophied attention spans might fade. Foster is one of the books recommended in this intriguing Guardian article about which books authors consistently give as gifts. They said then the teen might want to move on to something else by Keegan or by another Irish author or make some other connection. That's how it works with loving books. One leads to another, making a daisy chain of interest, learning, and enjoyment. I love that feeling of wanting to get back to my book, which I felt most recently with Stephen Becker's Covenant with Death, a literary courtroom thriller published in 1964, which in turn followed my immersion in Lily King's new novel, Heart the Lover. For me, it never ends, and I hope it never does. Books lead to a richer life. They also lead to a more successful life. As a 2-decade-long study showed, kids who lived with books in their home, as few as 20, benefited significantly over those who didn't, in areas like academic success, vocabulary development, and job attainment. There's something about having an actual physical book in one's hands that I'm convinced makes a difference. That's one reason why those measly book excerpts read on a school-issued laptop seem so terribly sad to me. There are charitable programs all over the country, including Reading is Fundamental, quote unquote, that help to put printed books in the hands of children and begin the formation of those all-important home libraries. If schools won't do it or believe they can't, book lovers everywhere may need to step in. We are legion, unquote. She's right. It's also one of the reasons why, when they're learning to read, as children, they should have a physical copy of the McGuffey readers in their hand. But that's not how they're taught to read in American schools. They put headphones on and they stare at a screen. And then they don't actually hear themselves reading the words out loud. They just hear an audio voice and then they click with a mouse, playing a game with words or syntax or whatever. It's useless. This is why we're graduating retards from American K-12 schools. And then, of course, that leads to this very quick little excerpt which Cicely Hellickson sent my way. And she's 100% accurate with this because this is actually happening. And I even read it again in one of those Reddit posts earlier because this is happening at the college level. This is from Jeremy Wayne Tate on X. It says, quote, in 100 years, we have gone from teaching Latin and Greek in high school to teaching remedial English in college. Despite all the obsession with STEM, things are no better on the math side. This is from the Harvard Crimson, and it says the Harvard Math Department will pilot a new introductory course aimed at rectifying a lack of foundational algebra skills among students, according to Harvard's Director of Introductory Math. I even spoke about that on the show months back, that they were again breaking down particular math classes, remedial math classes that they would have at the university level because the students that were showing up couldn't do basic math. Now, I have to make mention of this, and I have to go backwards just for a second to sort of tie in a point that I want to make regarding this, and then I'll kick it back, of course, to another education story here, which, again, continues to prove why literacy sucks. The other day in Ohio, in Cleveland, which is apparently the only place that seems to accept Vivek Ramaswamy, because when he shows up in Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, those are the only places that seem to like him. Probably Toledo, too, to some extent, but whatever. He's going to all of the armpits and the undercarriage of Ohio, as opposed to everywhere else that probably can't stand him. Either way, he decided to make some kind of a dramatic announcement in this small little room of not very many people at all. And he basically said that he's interested in getting rid of income tax in Ohio. Now, he's lying because he's a liar. So even if he thought that getting rid of income tax would be a thing, and even if that passed, all that would do is give every Ohio school district the opportunity to tax income. Because it would trick the income tax, or the income earner rather, into believing that they have more money. But what that would do is turn on the green light and light the fuse for anybody to simply tax their income through the back door, which is exactly what an American and certainly an Ohio K-12 school would do, which means theoretically, you wouldn't be actually saving money. It wouldn't be more money in your pocket. It would eventually get stolen through taxes, just in another way, from the public school system. So anytime somebody says they're going to do away with income tax, please understand that there's always going to be another tax on the back end that will always come around to bite these people right in the ass. And it's certainly going to happen in the state of Ohio, if not endless other places, which I'm sure it already does. But either way, anytime they run their mouths as politicians saying they're doing away with taxes, it just means you're going to have your taxes raised somewhere else, or the opportunity, rather, for them to be raised somewhere else is going to happen. And then it'll even ensnare enough gullible people to basically say, well, look, I have a little bit more money, so I guess I can vote for this school levy because, we need our schools. And then they'll again fork over more money. Vivek's a liar. He's not going to get rid of income tax. It won't happen. It just won't happen. Again, people who say that they're going to get rid of property taxes, even like Casey Putsch. Again, it's a great campaign line. But it's also one of those things that has to come from the top down, the bottom up at the same time, and then you have to crush it in the middle so that it never exists ever again. But even that, even if you remove property taxes, your local schools are going to lose their minds. It'll just make them want to tax income even more. So, I don't know. It's going to be a really ugly mess here to see what happens, but I don't think that Vivek Ramaswamy's making any inroads. He might be among the gullible and certainly the fraudsters, but no one with a brain in their skull. Okay, back to the American school system here. This was an interesting one. This is from ChristianPost.com. It was titled, Judge Backs Christian Dad Seeking to Opt Kids Out of LGBTQ Kindergarten Lessons. Yeah, because why do you have those in the first place? Oh, that's right. It's to sexually groom minors. It says a federal judge has ruled in favor of a Christian father seeking to have his kindergarten-age child excused from classroom lessons teaching LGBT ideology as litigation continues. In a December 30th opinion authored by Judge F. Dennis Saylor IV, the United States Court for the District of Massachusetts sided with the father, identified as Alan L., quote-unquote, in his litigation against Lexington Public Schools over its inclusion of LGBT-related material in the kindergarten curriculum. The plaintiff, a father of a kindergarten student, alleges that the school district violated his sincere and deeply held religious beliefs as a committed practicing Christian by exposing his child to content that directly contradicts those beliefs. After the concerned father discovered that Lexington Public Schools was introducing curriculum material addressing topics related to sexual orientation, gender identity, and family structures that conflicted with his religious beliefs, quote-unquote, he repeatedly requested that his child be opted out. He further told the school he wanted to opt his child out of any curriculum related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as health class and lessons, events, school assemblies, and other instructional activities and programs for which cover issues of sexual orientation or gender identity, unquote. All of his requests were denied. Of course they were, because they're sexual groomers, and that's what happens. So yeah, they're violating his constitutional rights. They're violating the constitutional rights of his child, and they're going to have to pay up. And it's not going to work out well for the school district, but then again, it never does, because these people, after all these years, they refuse to learn. They just do not learn. It doesn't matter how much legal precedent has come down on specific scenarios just like this one. They just refuse to learn. And no one around them, including their own school district lawyers, are saying, you'd better not do this anymore. You're going to get sued and you're going to lose. And you're going to have to pay up. And by the way, that's taxpayer money that goes to those lawsuits that legally defends school districts on this kind of behavior. It's your tax dollars. It's everybody's tax dollars. See, when people criticize school boards for mismanaging money, that's an angle that I think many of them either ignore or don't understand fully. Is that any lawsuit that the school district engages in specifically, or that is tossed their way because of their own actions as a school district, that right there is one of the major reasons why they waste money. Their actions always lead to a cost of some kind, and legal fees are not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. Just because they have a lawyer representing them doesn't mean that the lawyer, again, doesn't add extra fees on top of their already existing salary from their own law firm. And the more that lawyer has to defend that particular school district or that school board or a specific member, well, that's going to cost ultimately the taxpayers more money. And then, of course, they have to cut a salary or they have to cut a program, and then they go back to the taxpayers for a levy. And it's just this vicious cycle of school districts specifically just wasting cash and not seeming to care that ultimately it lands in the lap of the local taxpayers. So, again, if everybody just walked away on day one all at once, the amount of money that you would save as a taxpayer would be astronomical. Okay, piece of audio here. This is from a YouTube channel that I've played on the show before. I find it comical. Some people would say, whatever, that's terrible. We need to improve their learning environment. No, you can't improve this. It's too far gone. This is the YouTube channel it's the YouTube channel A Homestead Journey. And The specific video is from 2 weeks ago, and it's titled, "Teachers Are Done and Speak Out. Something is Very Wrong with America's Youth." And it's basically an hour long of TikTok videos of teachers again going off on what is wrong with their school and what they're experiencing. I've played audio like this before in the past, but I just want to give you another more recent taste here of some of these current teachers. So give a couple of them a listen here in 3, 2, 1.
I don't know what's happened to education. It breaks my heart. I wanted to be a teacher since I was in the 4th grade. Now I'm a teacher and I'm miserable a lot. I love the act of teaching. I love changing students' minds and helping them develop into smart individuals. But I don't do that. I don't get to teach. I spend my day managing behaviors and teaching students how to regulate their emotions. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a behavior specialist. I'm a teacher, and most of my job is managing behaviors. Most of my job is reaching out to admin and parents. That's not what I signed up for, and that's why so many teachers are leaving the profession. I always thought public education would be here. I always thought it would be a good option. I didn't think you had to have money in order to get a good education, but anymore, I'm beginning to think it's done for. I just had a comment and somebody said, education is failing because students are running the classroom and teachers have no authority. And that's true. I just watched a video of a teacher getting pepper sprayed by their student in the school because they took their phone because it was being used to cheat on a test. And there were people defending it. That's crazy.
But this is how my day went, and this is my formal submission as to why your teachers are tired of quitting.
10 things kids no longer know how to do, and I don't know why. Number 1, read a clock with confidence. They're always asking, what time is it? What time is it? I'm like, look at the clock. They're like, I don't know how to read that. And they say that to you with confidence. What's happening? Number 2, write in script. Whatever happened to writing in script? I love writing in script. I wish more of them knew how to do this. This is like a lost art. I'm sorry. I love writing in script. I prefer it over print, but they don't teach it in schools anymore. We need to bring that back. Bring it back. Number 3, memorize phone numbers. They don't know their parents' numbers. They don't even know what apartment they live in. They don't know what street they live on, which brings me into number 4. They don't know their address. We ask them, where do you live? I live down the block. Well, what's your address? I don't know. I'm talking about 3rd graders, y'all. 3rd grade. And it happened last year when I taught 2nd grade also. Number 5, they don't know how to count money. They don't know how to count money. And it's partially not their fault, right? Because we're always using cards, Apple Pay, things like that. But if you give them a few coins, they don't even know the names of the coins. They don't know the value of the coins. They can't add it all together. Like, what is happening? We got to bring it back. We got to bring it back. Know how to count coins. And you go over it in 2nd and 1st grade. So I'm kind of lost as to why we don't know how to count money, but okay. Number 6, they don't know how to tie their shoes. They have these fancy shoes and they don't know how to tie their shoelaces. Some of them have Velcro, and hey, if it works, it works. But I mean, come on, we should know how to tie our shoes. At 8 and 9, like, what's happening? What number did I get to? I don't know, 6 or 7? Anyway, the next one. They don't know their parents' names. I'll ask them, what is your mom's name? They'll be like, I don't know. You don't know your parents' name? They don't know where their parents are from. Like, do you speak to your parents at all? Yeah, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. Next, they don't know what year they were born. Some of them can tell you their birthday, but what year they were born, they don't know. Nor are they interested. I don't know. Next, they don't know how to use a dictionary. Now, yes, everything is on the phones now. They use iPads and things like that, but still being able to put things in alphabetical order. They don't know what something means, but they're also not interested in figuring out what it means. Yeah, now they have dictionaries on their phone where they're able to look things up, but to actually look it up when you know that you don't know about it, Like, there's no effort being put into that at all. So, of course, they're not going to use a dictionary. They don't even use their phone. All they have to do is copy down what the word is and read what it means. But they're not even going to do that. So, And last but not least, I think this is number 10. If it's not, y'all fill some down below. The last one is how to follow multi-step directions. If I tell them, go over there, get me that book, and then when you're done, wipe that desk off and then bring me the paper out of the book. They go, oh, okay. They go to the book and then they be like, what did you say to do again? Yeah. You're not listening. You're not listening at all. And it's a problem. I don't know, parents, if y'all can help us out, we need to go back to basics. Can you please help these kids out? Because they're coming to the classroom lacking the basics, and it's a problem. We're going to do our part as teachers, but we just need a little help. We need a little extra help at home. Please, please. Please, we're a community. We work together. So let's set our kids up for success. Let's set our students up for success. And let's work together and try to just bridge some of these basic gaps. Please.
The entire thing is an hour long. It's an hour long, one video after the other of that very thing. And I'm glad that she ended on that note because that's very stereotypical too. Teachers blaming parents and then parents blame teachers. Teachers look at parents and say, you're supposed to be teaching this, not me. And then parents look at teachers and say, you're supposed to be teaching this, not me. And it's this really just sort of sick interdependence, which they're both to blame. Everybody's to blame. Nobody should be moving on from one grade to the next without the ability to tell time, let alone count money. It's embarrassing. But that's the business, and that's the way that things are. And if Vivek Ramaswamy thinks he's going to fix that, well, he's lost his mind. You just have to filter money out of it, and again, it has to be left for the mentally handicapped and the physically disabled. And then, of course, then maybe there can be some kind of a state law that comes down that says, okay, now that it's only the mentally handicapped and the physically disabled in these environments, now we're going to get back to the basics. Now it's just going to be addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, telling time, tying your shoes, reading a book, spelling correctly, knowing your parent's name. I mean, I think we can take a guess as to why they don't know their parents' names. I bet dad's not around too much, if you catch my drift. But either way, videos like that are all over the place. They're all over the place. So it's exhausting, but it's an ever-present thing. I did want to read this. This was kind of funny, again, just to round out the education portion. This was on greatawakening.win, and this is kind of a little heartfelt story here. I'm a John Wayne fan, frankly. Thoroughly enjoy his movies and certainly did as a kid. Taught me a great deal and still do. But the post said the following. Here we go. Very top. March 1961. John Wayne received this teacher's letter and did something no Hollywood star would do today. It says the following here. A school teacher in a one-room schoolhouse asked her 12 students to write a single sentence to John Wayne. It was just a class exercise. She didn't expect a reply. 2 weeks later, a delivery truck pulled up to the school. What it carried changed how those children saw America. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. John Wayne's Hollywood office received hundreds of letters every week, fan mail, business proposals, scripts. It says most were handled by assistants, form replies, signed photos, things of that nature. It says this one was different. Plain envelope, handwritten address, Montana postmark. Inside were 3 pages of lined notebook paper written carefully in a teacher's hand. Dear Mr. Wayne, my name is Margaret. I teach at a small school in Montana. 12 students aged 6 to 14. Most are ranchers' children. We study your films and learn about American history and values. Unquote. Wayne read that line twice. Study your films. Not watch, study. The letter continued. Quote, we don't have a film projector, so we read your scripts aloud. The children act out scenes. It helps them understand courage, honor, and what it means to be American. Wayne set down his coffee. He had made dozens of Westerns, never once thought of them as textbooks. At the bottom of the letter were 12 short notes, one from each child, written in uneven, childlike handwriting. Quote, you are the bravest cowboy, unquote, and, quote, I want to be like you, quote, unquote, and you never give up, quote, unquote. 12 children in Montana learning about America from scripts read out loud in a one-room schoolhouse. Wayne folded the letter and sat quietly. He was 53 years old. 60 films behind him, some good, some forgotten. He'd never thought they mattered like this. He called his business manager, said, quote, how much does a good film projector cost? 16 millimeter, around $300, they said. Get the best one, he said, and prints of 10 of my films. Which ones, he said. Stagecoach, Red River, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, Fort Apache, Rio Grande. The teaching ones, quote unquote. The manager paused. Did they ask for this? No, Wayne said, but they need it. He wrote a $500 check, no publicity, no press release, just the school's name. Then he wrote a letter. Not a quick note, an hour of writing, crossing out lines, starting again. Dear Margaret and students, he said, thank you for your letter. I'm honored. More than you know that you study my films. You asked about teaching values. Here's what I believe. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when you're scared. Honor is keeping your word when no one is watching. Being American means believing everyone matters, even people in small towns far away from anywhere. I'm sending you a projector and some films, not because you asked, but because students like you deserve to see stories on the screen. You're not just 12 kids in Montana, you're 12 Americans. That's everybody. Keep learning, keep believing in something bigger than yourselves. Your friend, Duke, unquote. He sealed it, sent it, told no one, and moved on. 6 months later, Wayne was filming How the West Was Won in Montana. Big production. Mountains, cold rain. One day, weather shut down filming. The crew sat around waiting. A man approached Wayne nervous. Quote, Mr. Wayne, I went to school here, that schoolhouse, when I was a kid. Wayne looked up. Quote, we got a projector once, and your movies changed everything for us. Unquote. Wayne nodded, said nothing. That was how he liked it. No headlines, no charity galas, no social media posts, just a quiet decision made because 12 kids mattered. That's something Hollywood rarely does anymore. Unquote. Yep. I've said it before here on the show. If you want to do a little homework project or a homework assignment, watch a John Wayne movie this weekend. They're fantastic. You can randomly pick one. My favorite happens to be Rio Lobo. I love that movie. Saw that as a very young kid. From beginning to end, it's exciting. And there's hot babes in it too, so what's not to like? But either way, a lot of shooting, a lot of explosions. It's cool. Either way, lots of areas to learn, lots of things that can be done. But nope, your kids are in American K-12 elementary schools specifically, being shown, what is it, K-pop vampire slayers or demon slayers or these other stupid cartoons on iPads or computers. It's ridiculous. But that's what happens when you give your kids to government. It's just going to be ridiculous. Now, speaking of government, one last thing here before we close this out. Very positive move was made here. The food guidance from Health and Human Services and the dietary guidelines for Americans has changed. That's a fantastic thing. I mentioned in the last episode, and I think I misspoke, of course, when it came to vaccination, just very quickly. I said something like they increased the dosages. They didn't. They decreased them. And that whole entire ridiculous schedule, and hopefully, of course, that gets back to being 0, which is what it should be. But specifically, this website is realfood.gov. I would encourage you to bounce over there and check it out. I'll link it in the description below. They did exactly what I was suggesting happen 2 decades ago when I taught health education, and that is that you take the food pyramid, you flip it upside down, and then you move the food categories, and you just reverse them. This, of course, is laughable because school districts either have grant-paid or salary-paid wellness coordinators who've been running on Michelle Obama, Big Mike's old food guidelines and all of that nonsense that's existed for quite some time. And, this just has to do with getting rid of the deep state, even within HHS. And it certainly seems that that's been the case, which is good. Again, it's been stated endless times, of course, that we're not going to be wearing the wearables and we're not going to do any of that gimmicky nonsense because that, of course, hurts people. But little moves like this are a big, big deal. Like I said in the last episode, you want to move a mountain, it's got to be one rock at a time. And this is a big rock, and this is a good thing. So there's lots of downloadable documents here on this particular website. You can scroll all the way down to resources. Lots of downloadable PDFs and other things, and it's very well done. It's certainly aesthetically pleasing as far as the website is concerned also, but it's common sense. I wish they would spend a little more time on intermittent fasting and how beneficial that is to the human body too, but either way, one step at a time. So good news, lots of things happening. Again, it's happening quickly, which means it's coordinated. And this is being done on purpose, I think, which is a good thing. Doesn't mean we shouldn't pay attention still to the very suspicious and bad things that are happening and do our best to hold people accountable. And then, of course, when we can't even do that, what do? We just choose to not participate. That's the best way. But this is a perfect example, again, as far as the food guidelines are concerned, of things moving in a good direction. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, have a great weekend, and I'll catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.